Hi everybody, thank you for joining me. As you can see, we're in autumn and it is the last few weeks really of the garden looking spectacular. This tree in particular is a maple and the colour is always just so vivid. I love this beautiful confetti on the floor, well, the ground, and I just wanted to make sure that we could capture this at some point. So in this tutorial, what I wanted to share with you today was a little bit of a different take on a bouquet. We're doing a hand-tied bouquet, essentially a cross-stem bouquet, but the technique that I really wanted to share with you today is the mechanics. And what I'm going to create is a botanical armature. Now, in recent years, we've have a whole variety of wires and deco wires, aluminium wire, that allows you to create a structure. And essentially what an armature is a structure or a network, a mechanics network that allows you to, when you're inserting the flowers, to really support the flowers, allows you to really escape your bouquet because they have essentially a little, I guess, a backbone, a support underneath that you don't necessarily see, or with the decorative wires, obviously they're colour coordinated to the design. And then in more recent times, we've had some appear on the market. They're called eggs or guppies, which are made out of plastic, which I guess, you know, and the old school way of doing a bouquet like this that was really supported would have been with a foam, essentially like a little ice cream cone, like a foam holder. So I guess, you know, an armature made out of plastic is one step away from that, but to me it's still plastic. It's still an item that I might reuse a few times, but in essence, in the end, it can't go back to the soil and back to the ground and isn't as botanical as all your plants that you're using. So I wanted to show you a botanical option. And really just using materials that I, you know, forage regularly out of the garden. You've heard me talk about my grapevine many times before. So to start with, essentially what we're doing is creating a mini wreath. And we're going to build on that wreath to create sort of a network of branches. And then you see as we start to bring in some of these beautiful elements, it'll soften the design, but it'll be quite wild and quite earthy in the end, which, you know, I always love that anyway. I'll talk to you about the flowers as I get going. So we're creating a mini wreath, and it doesn't need to be, you know, particularly all round, or break like that. Just go round again, that's fine. It's a little bit brittle now that it's getting towards the end of autumn. Adding that piece in. And this piece did have some leaves on it, although they're not quite the same tone. They've definitely worked with the tree. They're quite pink, but I'll just see. I mean, they're really lovely. It'd be a shame to not have them within the design. So we'll just see if it'll work. It's just a little bit of a different tone to the leaves that I have chosen. So we'll just see. I won't make my mind up just yet. Always pluck them off later. So just adding to that, just the same as if you've seen in the wreath tutorial, if you've seen that, you're just basically going around, creating some tension in the vine so that it holds together. And with this technique, I very rarely use any bind wire or anything. It just seems to be able to stay in its place. It's got a little bit of crack in there. Taking that through, and then I wanted to use the Pandaria vine. This is all along the fence of our property. It's quite silver when you take off the leaves, but what I wanted to do was just start sort of going across the design now, across the wreath, to not necessarily make it too tight and round. What we want to create in here is a whole network of structures, you know, like a grid almost, but in a circular fashion. So see how you can see that that's just starting to close up the space a little bit. I'll go through here, maybe through there. And just sort of start, you know, giving it some height and sort of more three-dimensional shape. I'm going to also add another element that will create that same sort of three-dimensional shape. And that is dodder vine. So this is the dodder vine that's dried out a little bit. I do pick it from the creek and it's green and, you know, really easy to use, but it's not very strong and it doesn't make a great wreath. It doesn't have enough, you know, enough body to it. But by adding it, just nestling it in amongst the middle here, you can see it sort of creates a little bit of a nest. And it's just sitting there. I'll just wrap it around some of the other stems. But you can see this, you know, it's going to be quite a wild design, but, you know, I love that. I've had wild in my name, my business name, for years in some capacity. Now the other element that I wanted to bring in today too is when I saw this white, this is a couple of different types of ivy on the ivy greenhouse, and sometimes you get these pure white leaves and I think, oh, they're just magical, absolutely beautiful, and especially on that lovely sort of pinky burgundy stem. So again, just adding some of these sort of viney materials, and I just want to sort of tuck it in there, in amongst the armature, and just let it kind of sit out around the design. Just let it be on one side. And the other element that I have, it's a trailing element, is the beautiful honeysuckle, again off the fence. It's cream and it smells delicious, and my children have lots of memories of me showing them how to suck the juice out of a honeysuckle vine. I don't know if you've ever done that, but it's like tiny droplets. It's not, you know, it wouldn't sustain you if you're lost in the bush, but it's just so sweet. It's seriously just like honey syrup. So I just want to, I will add more of this at the end, but I just wanted to show you, by adding some of these elements in early, it allows you to create this structure. And essentially it's like adding the foliage, I suppose, to basing up, which is, you know, what I often do at the beginning of a bouquet anyway. Tuck that back in. So, you know, looks a little bit interesting right now. So let's start adding our stems within this design. So first of all, I wanted to add some of this foliage. There was only a few sprigs of this really dark foliage on the liquid amber, but it is like chocolate. I don't know if you can really see how amazing it is, and it has this satin finish on it, like, oh, it's just so beautiful. Just amazing that one tree can be in all different stages, green, yellows, oranges, all the way through to this beautiful chocolate. So that kind of dictated the color palette today. I knew I had some beautiful creams, but I wanted to give it this really rich color of this autumn foliage. So I'm just going to add that through the design. And what will start to happen now, I'll be able to hold the arrangement and just let this sort of float on my hand. Might just trim that down a little bit. It's a little heavy. So that's essentially filling that space in the center, okay? Now the next focal element that we'll add now is the leucadendrons. They're quite strong, they're quite, you know, rigid, whereas I've got some other lovely cascading elements in here, but I just really wanted to repeat that colour. It's always important that, especially when you're using a really contrasting colour, that you repeat it somewhere in the arrangement, whether it be, you know, in this beautiful succulent, which you can see is going to be amazing in here, but I also wanted to also add some of this leucadendron as well. So just taking that through the back of the design. Well, won't really be a back and a front, it'll be an all-round design, but I'll just start letting that be supported. And I'm going to essentially add my material today in groupings for this one. Quite, you know, liked the idea of it being a grouped design. Okay, so it's just now sitting above my hand. And the next sort of focal, let's put the roses in. So there's a beautiful buttercream rose. These are grandifloras. They always smell amazing. And just about finished. There's just really the last sort of lot of roses for the next sort of few weeks in the market before they're finished for the year. And, you know, I quite like, you know how much I like to know my flowers have a season and I get to say goodbye to them and, you know, welcome the tulips and welcome the ranunculus and the anemones that are all about to begin. So we'll take these roses, as you can see, I'm just threading them through the armature, but they're just holding there perfectly because of that support, which is really nice. And just be sure that you vary your heights with your flowers. You know, I talked to you about kind of creating that depth, ins and outs, the non-technical term. But I wanted to keep all my roses in one area, because the shape and the form of a rose is very similar to the shape and the form of the lisianthus. So I want to make sure that I've got some space between those two really round elements. I'll just raise that little one up above there. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Okay, who next? Maybe the carnations. Very old-fashioned flower. And one I can't say, well, if I was honest, I haven't always had a love for, which is kind of a shame. When they just tick so many boxes for a florist. Like, they're available all year round. They're long-lasting, really long-lasting, weeks long-lasting. Come in a huge variety of colour. This colour is my absolute favourite. It is just the softest mint green. You know, I'm a sucker for green flowers anyway, but these are just beautiful. So they just, you know, they really don't deserve that whole old-fashioned 80s vibe they've got going on, but maybe that's just because I've been in the industry a long time. You young florists might just think they're the coolest thing out. Anyway, I do too. I've learned to love them. Another beautiful thing you can do with your carnations is actually pull all the petals off, and they end up like acting like leaves in buttonholes, corsages, headpieces. So beautiful, like little feathery leaves. Which is a beautiful way to use them as well. Okay, so I'm sitting those carnations just a little bit higher, again, just to add some depth and texture in the design, and then just working around into this circle. Okay, let's bring our little succulent in. Well, little, he's quite big actually, and I did pull him out of the garden. So after I finish this bouquet, I'll be sure to plant him again. So yeah, don't